whilst I get it up and running. Okay, so on the screen at the moment you should see the title page for taxable payments. Before we begin, just a bit of a heads up on what I do at MYOB. I'm a product manager and I look after everything compliance related for our products. So if the government changes laws, then it's my job to liaise with the ATO, with Treasury, with government, and find out what those changes are and implement them within our software and ensure that we're always compliant. So taxable payments was one of those compliant changes that came into effect almost 18 months ago, and we're seeing some information coming through from the government and the ATO in regards to how it went. So what we'll do today is we'll do a bit of a refresher. We'll just quickly go through what is taxable payments and why the government brought taxable payments in. We'll talk about some of the ATO statistics that have come out of all of the lodgements, what some of the common errors were, and what, if any, are the ATO going to be doing in regards to follow-up work. We'll give you a quick update on when and who can lodge the TPAR form, the Taxable Payments Annual Report, and there have been some changes in that. We'll talk about the support as HIA members, what you get, and we'll quickly give you a very quick demonstration of how taxable payments works in Account Right Live 2013 and also Account Right V19. Okay, all right, legislation. Do a quick wrap-up of what it's all about. Businesses who derive more than 50% of their income from the building and construction industry and they pay for a building and construction service, they are required by law to report this to the ATO at the end of the financial year. And that includes the total amount paid, the GST paid, and contractor information, ABN, telephone numbers, addresses, if you've got them. What I like to do is provide a very, very simple sentence and break that sentence down in regards to what is reportable and what's not reportable. So the sentence here I've got is, Bob purchases and pays for paint and painting services from Paints R Us on the 7th of July. Now let's dissect this a little. Bob is the purchaser and Paints R Us are the supplier. Bob does have an ABN. He's also primarily in the building and construction industry, so he has more than 50% of his income coming from there. As a result of that, he has a reporting burden. He must report to the ATO. Now, let's have a look at the sentence again. Bob purchases and pays for painting and painting services. Now, what I mean by paint and painting services is he bought paint, let's call that 200 litres of paint, and painting services could be a labour component that Paints R Us are supplying, and let's say that that labour component is someone is going to be painting the interior of 4 houses. Now, because this transaction has a painting service, i.e. the labour component, this transaction is caught and is taxable, excuse me, and is a taxable payment. If the transaction said Bob purchases and pays for paint, 200 litres, from Paints R Us, it's only the purchase of goods. And if that's the case, then the transaction is not reportable. So if there is a service component in the transaction, it might be on its own, or it might actually have goods associated with it. If that occurs, then the transaction is reportable, so long as it's obviously used within the building and construction industry. And lastly is, I paid it on the 7th of July. Taxable payments is what the accountants call based on the cash method of accounting. And what that means is we only advise the ATO of a taxable payment if we physically paid the amount to the supplier. So if I've just received an invoice on the 30th of June for $10,000 for painting services and I have not paid it on the 30th of June, yes, that is potentially an expense on your profit and loss. It's a liability in your balance sheet. However, for taxable payments purposes, because you have not paid anything on that bill, it is not reportable. And if you did pay a small component, so let's say you paid $2,000 on the 30th of June out of the 10, then the $2,000 is the only amount that's reportable to the ATO. Okay, now let's have a look at almost a real-life scenario. Mary from Building Co. has asked Bob the Chippy to supply and install high-end laser light roofing sheets. Bob the Chippy presents the invoice, which you can see in the orange down below. And really all the invoice just says is $20,000 worth of laser light roofing sheets, so we got the really expensive stuff, $2,000 for installation, and the total of the invoice is $22,000. Okay, what value do I need to report to the ATO? Now, can I ask everyone who's attending, in your section there where you're asking questions, can you actually type in what value you think we should be telling the ATO? Is it $2,000 because that's the service component of this invoice? Is it the $20,000, that's the goods, or is it the total, the $22,000? So 3 figures, 22 and 22,000. If you can put what you think the answer is there. And Kerry, can I get you to start giving me a running commentary on what everyone thinks?
Yep, sure. I've got a 22,000, 2,000, 22,000, 22,000. Total amount, 2,000, 22,000. Mainly 22,000. Okay. And somebody has written nil.
Mainly 22s of the... Nil?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Be curious as to why nil, but the answer is $22,000. It's logical and it sounds correct that $2,000 is the service component, and I should be telling the ATO that $2,000 was my service component. It doesn't make sense, you know, the invoice is worth 22, less than 10% of that is for the services component. Aren't I really telling the ATO a bit of a furphy that my services are so high at 22,000? And the answer is the ATO doesn't care. They're happy with 22,000. It's still income in Bob's name, and the ATO will do their checks accordingly. So, and the other reason why they've done it is to try and make it a little easier for businesses, so that they don't need to go down into detail in an invoice and actually say, is this reportable, is this not reportable, add them up and then include it. So if there's a service component on the invoice, so long as it's not an incidental, so i.e. it's a very, very small amount of dollars, then the total value of that invoice is reportable to the ATO. Okay, some tips, tricks and myths in regards to taxable payments. You only have to report on business-to-business transactions. If you make a business-to-consumer transaction, the consumer does not have to advise the ATO of any taxable payments, so only business-to-business within the building industry. If you pay PAYG withholding and ABN withholding tax on behalf of your contractors, then they should not be included in your taxable payments reporting. And the reason for this is the ATO already know what you've paid to them in regards to PAYG or ABN withholding tax, because you include that within your BAS every month or every quarter. So they would prefer it if you didn't double up. The ATO have said, look, if in doubt, just record the transaction. So if there's a query as to whether it's service component, whether it was used in the building and construction industry, whether you are required to actually report to the ATO, they've turned around and said, look, if in doubt, just report it, and if it's material, they'll actually sort it out on their end later on. Another one which came out last year, or last financial year, was the requirement to advise your contractors of what you've told the ATO. This is not a legal requirement. You don't have to tell them if you don't want to. It's entirely up to you. There's no required format. You can give them a call and tell them if you choose to. You can write it on a napkin with lipstick. You can provide a summary, one total amount. You can provide them with details at a transaction level. It's entirely up to you. You don't have to do anything. And look, speaking to businesses over the last 12 months, it really is up to each individual business as to whether you're going to tell the contractor. Personally, I wouldn't unless I had a very good relationship with the contractor and I knew there wasn't anything dubious going on. Okay, ATO statistics, so lodgement. A scary 88% of people who completed a taxable payments annual report this year did it manually. That figure has not upset the ATO, but they're not really impressed. They expected a higher electronic figure. And what it means for building companies out there, or people in the building industry, is they're taking a very long time to complete taxable payments. If 88% of people had have completed the manual reports, they're sitting there, 5, 10, 20 contractors completing them through. It would take you probably an hour or two to actually comply with the law and fill out that information and ensure it's all correct, and then mail it to the ATO. Whereas if you used accounting software with taxable payments, you could have the whole lot done in about 5 or 10 minutes. This wasn't something that the ATO wanted as a burden for businesses, because they knew that the software providers would come up, like MYOB, would come up with a taxable payment solution that's quick and easy to use. So there's a lot of electronic options. The building business can lodge on the portal, the ATO portal. Your BAS agent can lodge, your tax agent can lodge, and if you don't want to do any of that, you can always save the file, the TPAR file, onto a CD and then send that off to the ATO. In fact, if you really want to annoy the ATO and you've got a 3.5-inch floppy, you could actually send it to them on a 3.5-inch floppy, because surprisingly they still get thousands upon thousands of 3.5-inch floppies with PAYG payment summaries, etc. on them. So there are many, many electronic options. You can use your MYOB software to send that information electronically and really cut the time and make taxable payments really a non-event, something that will take you 5-10 minutes. The ATO have advised of some of the common errors that businesses have faced, and surprise, surprise, one of the main ones was that the building businesses, were not using the authorised or correct ATO stationery. The Taxable Payments Annual Report is a specific document. It must come from the ATO if you're writing it in manually. And the reason why they're very pedantic about using that form, and none of the software providers can create these forms, is because the ATO have got character recognition software that they use to scan your manually prepared paper document. It knows where all of the boxes are exactly to the millimetre, and it can read all of that information, and it digitises that and then saves it onto the ATO system. So if it's not on the ATO stationery, the ATO get upset. They've received a lot of Excel spreadsheets, both the file and on a paper format. MYOB, we've got a copy of it down below, has a report that just gives you an overview, and on it it says, do not submit this report to the ATO, and yet the ATO have received thousands of these reports from the building industry. Unfortunately, if you're in that camp, the ATO, if they haven't already, are going to come back to you and actually say, look, thanks for this, but you're going to have to give it to us either electronically or on the ATO stationery, and we will deem whatever you've sent to us as nil and void. So if you're in that boat, expect a phone call. The electronic file contains errors. The ATO had created a new way of sending information to them, and the taxable payments report was one of those. And unfortunately, I believe it's a poor workflow on the ATO's end, and what it did was it allowed businesses to lodge the report multiple times. People would lodge it, they would get a validation error, and if you're using MYOB software, you won't get any warnings as in this is a critical error and the file was not lodged. But you could get warnings that say an ABN wasn't included, or address was not there, or something is missing, but it's not a mandatory item. And what people were doing is they were getting this validation report after they'd lodged, fixed up whatever errors they could, and then re-lodged it. Because of that, the ATO now have two versions of your TPAR file, and they're scratching their heads going, well, which is the correct one and which is not? And invariably what they normally do is they just go by lodgement time and date. So if you did one on Tuesday and then you did another one on Wednesday, they would effectively take the Wednesday one as the last version. But they got upset about that. Personally, as I said, that's a workflow issue on their behalf, and hopefully that will change for next year. Probably of big concern to businesses is the ABN data mismatch. They've found that a lot of contractors have given incorrect ABNs to the building business. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I'm Richard Puff the bricklayer, and rather than using my own ABN, I've actually used BHP's ABN. So there's a data mismatch in that Richard Puff does not equal BHP, and the ATO are seeing a lot of this, and they're going to start telephoning people about why. And that's exactly one of the follow-ups that the ATO is doing. So even though it's early days, the ATO are actually very, very happy with the TPAR regime. In fact, there's talk already that it's going to go beyond the building and construction industry to other industries. So we'll see what happens. We now have a new government, so we'll see exactly what happens there. Have you lodged your TPAR? The ATO have advised that there are still thousands of businesses out there that have not lodged their taxable payments annual report. If your business is one of those, then I highly recommend that you contact the ATO and just tell them, look, we're sorry, we will be lodging the TPAR file or paper document, and we hope to get this done in the next, X days or whatever. By contacting the ATO, you're becoming proactive. The ATO realise that this is the first year, and they're being a little bit lenient in regards to late lodgement. And if you contact them before they contact you, they'll either reduce the penalties or you won't get any. And I'm assuming that you'd be pretty hard done by if you actually got penalties. So be proactive. If you're in that boat, definitely contact the ATO. And it is a legal requirement. This is, even though there's no taxes, etc., payable by you by lodging the taxable payments annual report, the government still has the overriding late lodgement penalties regardless of tax. So you definitely can, and in the future you will be hit by them. So make certain you lodge them. As I said before, the ABN mismatch is an issue that the ATO are definitely going to follow up. They've said that in the next 1 to 3 weeks they will start calling businesses for a please explain. Now, whilst won't be privy to some of these phone calls, but I suspect what it is they're going to give businesses a call and they're going to say, look, I have Richard Puff and he's provided BHP's ABN. Can you confirm that this is correct? And if it is correct, then I would suggest the ATO is more than likely going to be asking, do you have any contact details that I can contact Richard and then follow it up with him? So that might occur. And lastly as well, electronic rather than paper. The ATO are really pushing the electronic means of lodgement. Number one, it's fantastic for them because the ATO gets the raw data in straight away and gets it in very accurately. But also number two, because it's done electronically through accounting software, it means that the impact on businesses is far less than if it was done manually on paper. And believe it or not, whilst the ATO wanted taxable payments regime to come on board, they really did want an automated process that software could do it, and that it should be a simple, easy to do process at the end of the year. So they'll definitely be promoting the electronic use of it next year rather than paper. Okay, when and who can lodge the TPAR? Now, as I said before, if you're late, you are late. You need to contact the ATO, and I suspect or would hope that you'll get a little bit of relief or a lot of relief in regards to ATO penalties. For next year, the 2013-14 year, all of the taxable payments annual reports are due on the 21st of July 2014. There's no extension for the quarterly BAS lodges. So in 2013, if you had a quarterly BAS, you could lodge it on the 28th. That's no longer the case. It's the 21st for everybody. Authority to electronically lodge the taxable payments annual report. This has changed slightly. Accountants and now BAS agents and businesses are able to lodge the TPAR form. Where is the change? The change is in the BAS agents. It was very, very late in the piece in July that the ATO, or the government and then the ATO, passed legislation and approved the concept that BAS agents could electronically lodge the TPAR. By the time that this was known, the 21st and the 28th of July was either almost on us or already passed, and most people and most BAS agents had no idea that they could actually lodge it. So if you are using a bookkeeper or BAS agent to do your books this year, 2014, they will be able to lodge it. If you're deciding to save a little bit of money because it's a simple report to do using your accounting software and you want to lodge it yourself, I understand one of the hiccups that people have faced is, yes, as a business I can lodge it electronically, however, I need to have an Oz key before I can electronically lodge. An Oz key can be obtained by going to www.ozkey.abr.gov.au. And what an Oz key is it's a digital certificate, and all it does is it recognises you as a specific person who is able to lodge specific forms for a specific company. So for example, Richard Puff, I would have an MYOB would have an Oz key that would allow me to lodge, let's say that MYOB was in the building and construction industry, that I could physically lodge the TPAR form and it would have my details on their record. So an Oz key is a digital certificate proving who you are and who can lodge, and it is required before the business can lodge. Your accountant and your BAS agent all have to have an Oz key to make these lodgements, and they already have one. But typically about 2/3 or 3/4 of businesses in Australia don't have their own Oz key. So if you're going to lodge yourself and save some dollars, get yourself an Oz key, it's free, and then you can lodge yourself. I won't go through the listing one by one, but on the screen is a listing of the MYOB products that actually support taxable payments. It's probably easier to say which ones don't, because there's only a few crosses there, but Account Right V19 Standard, Account Right Live Basics, and Account Edge Basics don't. The rest of the products do. But they're different. Support for HIA members, you've got a lot. There is support on their HIA website. The fantastic team there have developed a user guide, which if you go onto the HIA website, type in taxable payments, you'll actually get to see the TPAR report. You can download that and have a read. It is actually a really good document. If you're a paid-up, subscribed member to MYOB, you can telephone us at any time, email, live chat, or you can just search online on the MYOB website for any answers or queries, support notes that might be there. There are how-to videos on how to do taxable payments. There's a community forum where a lot of people may have already asked the question that you're wanting to ask, and there's already answers to it. We also have a special blog for HIA members, and it's www.myob.com.au/blog/HIA, and it's got some useful information about what taxable payments is all about. And lastly, if you've got a very specific question about taxable payments, then I'd highly recommend going to the ATO website and actually drilling down into the information that's there. It is actually fairly easy to read, and it does provide a lot of detailed information that could apply to your specific business. Okay, what we'll do now is we will just do a quick product demonstration of Account Right 2004, actually, not 2003. I just upgraded mine. We're about to release the latest version 2004 in the next few weeks, so I've got a beta version of that, and you can see that on the screen now. Now there are differences between Account Right Live and Account Right V19, so we will go through both of them, and I believe that created some confusion with some users, so we'll go through both and you'll be able to see what the differences are. Now for Account Right Live, what we've done is we've created the taxable payments feature, but we've put an on-off switch. And the reason why we've put an on-off switch is because taxable payments only affects building and construction businesses, which is about 20% of businesses in Australia. So rather than clutter up the software with something that doesn't mean much for 80% of businesses, we've created an on-off switch, and it's very, very easy to turn on. You'll notice here, just where my mouse is on the right-hand side of the page, you'll notice that there's nothing in this box, and you'll notice when I turn it on, you'll now see the taxable payments feature. And what you need to do is you need to click on Setup and then go to Preferences, and then once you've selected Preferences, up pops your preference window, select Reports and Forms, and once you've done that, on the bottom left you'll notice that there is a question: I report taxable payments made to contractors. Highlight that and then select OK. And what happens now is you'll notice that on that screen that we were on before, on the right hand side we now have a new option called Report Taxable Payments. That's one area that's now switched on, but it's also switched on in several other areas. And we'll show you one of those by going into your card file. Now, this should be your next step. Turn taxable payments on, go into your card files, select your suppliers, create the list, and then what you should be doing is going into your listing of suppliers and then ascertaining which one of these is going to supply a service that I need to report. And let's say, for example, Mountain Springs. I believe that I always have services from this company. What I've done is I've opened up their card. I've clicked on Buying Details up the top, and you'll notice on the bottom right here I have a question that says Report Taxable Payments. Now if I click on this, a pop-up message is going to appear. And on this pop-up message, it asks you, do you want to report all transactions in the current financial year for the supplier? If I know that Mountain Springs is providing me primarily with services, then I would tick this. That means that all of the transactions from the 1st of July until now for Mountain Springs would all be marked as reportable. Now I'm going to say yes. I'm going to OK, and then go through all the rest of your suppliers and just tick them as reportable or not. Now, once you're done going through your cards system, it's simply a matter of making transactions in AccountRight Live, and they'll automatically be flagged as reportable or not reportable, and you will have the option to, at the transaction level, to actually mark it yes or no, or override what the computer's done. And I'll show you that. Let's click on a spend money transaction, and you'll notice that I'm going to now drop down, and I'm going to, who am I going to pick? I'm going to pick, I'm going to pick Mountain Designs. Let's do that one. Where's Mountain Designs? Mountain Springs, sorry. You'll notice here that we've already got a tick box with reportable payments on. So if you didn't set up reportable payments, this box would not appear, and it's automatically ticked. Now I would then enter in the normal information for the spend money or purchases, and I'd complete it, record it, and then this transaction would be marked as reportable. If, let's say, for example, I chose a different supplier, just ignore that, Mountain Electricity, and it automatically, because I haven't gone into the card file and marked it as reportable, it automatically has not ticked the status of reportable payment. But let's say this is a one-off. I normally don't have services provided by Metropolitan Electricity that's used in the building and construction industry, but in this case I have. So I can complete all of the information I want on my spend money or my purchases, but I can tick this transaction as reportable. And what will happen is once I click record is that this specific transaction will be marked as taxable, reportable, and will be advised to the ATO once I go through my reportable summary. Let's assume now that it's the end of the year and I've entered in all of my banking transactions, my spend money, my purchases, etc. And it's now time to report to the ATO my taxable payments. It's as simple as going report taxable payments, select the year, so in AccountRight Live I have the option of going back or forwards. Next, fill in my company details. Next, review my transactions. Now this is the area where I get a full listing of all of the transactions that I've entered for the year within AccountRight Live, and I can start to look at these. And if I want, if I suggest that for Mountain Springs a couple of them are not reportable, I can go in and untick them and then record it, and then away we go. So this is just your review process. It's quite handy because it has a fantastic filter option, so I can look at all of my transactions. I can look at my not reportable transactions, my reportable, and I can slice and dice and really get into the information that I want. Once you're happy with that, record it and then move on to the next phase. What we have is the last part here, which is view my taxable payments report and also create my TPAR file. So previewing your taxable payments report is something that I think you should do and save a copy on your computer system. It's just a record of all of the transactions that make up the TPAR file. And here you go, Mountain, Mojo, Mountain Springs and Underwater Springs are all of the transactions, and this is the detailed information that makes up your TPAR. Once you're happy with that, then you can create your taxable payments file. And what this is doing is just saving this specific file on your computer somewhere. So remember where you've saved it, because obviously when you go onto the ATO business portal, you're going to have to then upload that file to the ATO. So remember where you've saved it, and remember the name, tpar.co1, and it's a very simple process of uploading that to the ATO. That is taxable payments for Account Right Live. It's very easy to use. There's a little bit of setup process at the beginning, but once you've done that setup process, then it's just a matter of double checking, the transactions that come through the year. Is there a service component? Yes. Cool. Is it marked as a reportable transaction when I'm creating my spend money or assigning my bank feeds or purchases? Is it a supply of a service? Yes, and it's flagged. That's it. That's all you have to do. And at the end of the year, it is literally a 5 or 10 minute review process, and then sending that data off to the ATO. So that is Account Right Live. What we'll do now is we will have a quick look at Account Right V19. So I'm just booting that up as we speak. Bear with me. And it is slightly different for Account Right V19. There is no on-off switch. So that's coming up. In V19, there's no on-off switch, and you are unable to actually mark specific transactions as reportable. So as you can see by what's on the screen at the moment, report taxable payments are automatically shown there. If I click on my card file, and we do a very similar thing as what we did for Account Right Live, is let's just go into a supplier. Let's do Kirby Superstand. Click on Buying Details. Oh, he's already marked as reportable. I'll pick someone else. Outreach Real Estate. Buying Details. Okay. Now you'll notice on this supplier that report on taxable payments is not ticked. All I need to do is tick that, select OK, and what that means is that for all my transactions for the year that are linked to Outreach Real Estate, so these are outgoing transactions or withdrawals, payments to Outreach Real Estate, these will all be marked as a reportable taxable payment. So you've got a little bit of less control. It just marks all of them as reportable than what you have in V19. Again, once you're at the end of the financial year, select Purchases, click on Report Taxable Payments. You've got very, very similar process as you do in Account Right Live. Enter in your company details. Here are all of your supplier totals, and if I want to drill down into Kirby Superstands, I can click on the transactions on the right hand side, and I get to see the transactions here, and if I want, I can tick or untick these as I see fit. So this is the review process that that you might want to do, or that you should be doing, sorry, is just going in, unticking or ticking. Once you're happy with it, then it's very, very similar to Account Right Live. Once I'm happy with these transactions and these totals on the right-hand side, I can then print my taxable payments report, and I can then create my taxable payments file. And I've got nothing to check, that's because I didn't have it ticked. Create taxable file, and again it's the same concept whereby it's saving the tpar.co1 file. It's saving that onto your computer, so remember where it is, and then log into the ATO business portal and then upload that file to the ATO. So two different approaches for dealing with taxable payments. Account Right Live, because of its setup at the beginning, probably would have less time there'd be less time for you to complete your taxable payments report in July, because the transactions throughout the year have been either flagged reportable or not with the override switch at any time, whereas with Account Right V19 the transactions for that supplier are wholly marked as reportable, and then you'll go in and tick or untick as necessary. So, and that would be done typically in July. So that is Account Right Live demo and also Account Right V19 demo. That's all I really wanted to share with everyone. Just wondering, are there any questions? Kerry, do we have any questions from...
Yes, we do. Eileen's asked, can you demonstrate where the contractor details are recorded, i.e. ABN and contact details? Are these on the card file?
Yes. Cards list. What product? I'm just going into Account Right Live. So here is where you're putting in your supplier information. Now, for example, the supplier information, your address, etc., are all part of the information that is sent to the ATO. And you'll notice here under buying details, there's the ABN. So this is very similar in both products. So V19 and Account Right Live have got the same information. So your ABN's under buying details, and under profile is your address, telephone number, etc., which can also be included. And don't forget, under buying details is that question, reportable, yes or no. Okay.
Okay, and Zarko has asked, would you recommend that the Oz key be restricted to managing directors of companies rather than admin staff?
Oh, that's a bit of a hard question to ask, because I don't really know too much about the business. The Oz key, if left unchecked, could allow anyone, or reasonably anyone, to lodge different documents to the ATO. So it doesn't only allow you to lodge TPARs, it also allows you to lodge PAYG payment summaries and a few other forms. Now, I know that there are a lot of businesses out there that might go, well, yes, look, anyone can lodge the taxable payments form. I'm not worried about that, but I'm going to restrict who can see and lodge my payroll information, i.e. my PAYG payment summary information. So I don't know whether you'd have to go to the top of the organisation for lodgement, but probably someone who's at that payroll level or that financial or management level, they would be the ones, I suspect, who should be lodging and not lower down. But again, it really depends on the business. If you're a small business, you'll have one person that's doing a whole lot of things, so get them to do it. So hopefully that answers the question, but it really is a business-by-business case.
Okay. Now, Simone has said, during your demo of version 19, there were some suppliers without ABN numbers in the report. Will MYOB allow you to report without these numbers?
Yes, because you can still make payments to these suppliers, but you have to deduct your 46.5% ABN withholding. Now, you'll notice that they were automatically not ticked in version 19 and in Account Right Live, and the reason why they're not ticked is because they are, or they should be, and if you're using MYOB, they are reported on the BAS as ABN withholding, and therefore they're declared to the ATO using that form and not the taxable payments report. So we give the option, you can override it if you want and report it to them, but you remember I said one of the myths or tricks and tips was if you're deducting PAYG withholding or ABN withholding, don't include it on your taxable payments.
Okay.
Next.
Fiona has Account Right Live 2013 and she's asked, do the other details as well as the subcontractors' figures get uploaded when lodging through ATO using the AUSKey? So therefore everything that is needed gets uploaded.
Everything that gets, everything that's required by the ATO is uploaded. And what that effectively is all of the totals. So if you looked at some of the reports that I presented on the screen, they gave you a listing of all of the transactions and then gave you a total. The ATO are only after the total amount paid, the GST paid, again the total, and then the supplier identification field, and that is name, address, telephone number, ABN. So some of those fields are not mandatory, so address and telephone number are not mandatory, but ABN and, sorry, ABN is, I don't believe is mandatory either, but obviously the name is. So that's the information that gets sent. So whatever is sent on that file is 100% all that the ATO needs.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Daryl has said, an ABN registered contractor, nil deductions, do I report to TPAR?
No. No, don't report it.
Well, that was simple.
That was a simple one, yeah.
Janine has asked, how is the ATO using this information in the long term? I think you've already mentioned that they're doing that data matching to find those contractors who haven't been reporting the amount they're earning.
Yeah, so look, the ATO, the reason, or one of the reasons why the ATO brought in taxable payments is because businesses, especially in the building and construction industry, there are many, many businesses or contractors not lodging their tax return or lodging their tax return really late, or, which is quite common, is they're dropping one complete part of their revenue for the year. So let's say they worked on 10 houses, but all they're doing is reporting 9 to the ATO, so they're pocketing the 10th one. By doing this, at the end of the day, the ATO is, I suspect what they're going to do is they're going to rock up. Let's say I'm the one that's cheating, and I haven't, or perhaps not cheating, but I haven't lodged a tax return. The ATO is just going to knock on my door and say, look, Richard, we have received 10 TPARs, and these TPARs have all suggested that you've received revenue of $1 million because let's say 10 of them all had $100,000 on it, and based on normal statistics on the building and construction industry, you should have made a profit of X, Y, or Z. Therefore, here is a tax assessment bill of X amount of dollars. And they'll literally just rock up, hand me that, and effectively it forces me to do my tax return, because whatever they come up with is probably going to be a much higher figure than what I would get in real life. So they're forcing people to lodge their tax returns, and they're also getting a very good insight into whether people are cheating or not. So for example, if in that scenario the ATO knows I should have received $1 million worth of revenue, if I lodge my tax return and I've declared on there I only received 800,000 revenue, then guess what? The ATO is again going to be knocking on my door and saying, hey, hold on, this is wrong. We've been told $1 million. They'll audit me, or they'll just hand an amended assessment. So they are going to use this information to get a much better understanding on what people are doing and get them to pay the correct amount of tax.
Okay. David has asked, is there a percentage of people required to report that didn't?
Yes, so I did mention that there are a lot of builders who still have not lodged their TPAR file or manually created the report. The ATO are still very, very reluctant in giving me too much information about the taxable payments. So they've just said that yes, there's thousands that still need to lodge. Whether that's 2,000, 3,000, or 50,000, I don't know. I suspect it'll be closer to single 5,000, 10,000. But yeah, and as I said, the ATO are going to follow them up. So if you're reportable, if your business is deemed to be reportable, then and you haven't reported, then expect a phone call.
Okay, Zarko has said, you mentioned that only business-to-business transactions are reportable, not business-to-consumer. If payments are made to self-employed contractors for ad hoc or once-off transactions, are these reportable?
Based on that information, yes, because you're still going from business to business. The supplier you've said was a contractor who I'm assuming has an ABN and is supplying a service that's used within the building and construction industry. So if that is the case, then that transaction is reportable to the ATO. The reason why it's fairly clear-cut is, let's say, clear-cut in regards to business and business to consumers. Let's say that I'm building a shed for Richard for his house, and Richard is the consumer. It's Richard that's actually making the payment. So therefore, by definition, Richard would need to then advise the ATO of the payment that they've made to the shed construction company. And that's obviously not going to work, so the consumers are not going to report to the ATO. So that's why they've specifically said business to business, because both sides will have dealings with the ATO, and it's just another report that they have to lodge. So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, I'm conscious of the time, so I've got, I'll just read out one more question, and if people have more questions, or if I've written to you and said I will look after your questions a little bit later, just send them through to me and I can send them to Richard, or as Richard mentioned, there is that blog that you can go on to. So Simone has asked, can you please redefine who is required to report? We do not have subcontractors, however we do supply a service and product to builders. I think they'll be reporting on you then, Simone. Correct.
That's correct. So you're providing the service, they're paying for your service. That organisation or the other organisation will be reporting on you. If you then had contractors that were used in that transaction, then you would be reporting on those contractors. But you said that you didn't, so so exactly what Kerry said. It's the other entity that would have the taxable payments compliance burden.
Okay, and just quickly, Fiona has asked about the ABN mismatch, and she has said she normally doesn't perform any searches on the ABN. But you've mentioned previously, I think, that the tax office won't be blaming Fiona if it wasn't obvious that it was an incorrect ABN. Is that right?
Yeah, the ABN seems to be changing their mind in regards to the checking. Apparently in the last month or so there's been some audits where businesses have been penalised because the ABN that was given was incorrect, or that they were not registered for GST. This actually contradicts what the ATO have said and what is on their website and what's in legislation at the moment. But look, in essence, if the old adage was that if the ABN smells like an ABN, it reads like an ABN, then it's deemed to be an ABN. The ATO provide examples of if there's an ABN that's 111111 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then the ATO have said, well, that looks dodgy, therefore it is your legal requirement to actually go to the ABR website and quickly do an ABN search. Look, it pays though that when you're dealing with a new supplier to actually go for the first time at least and actually do an ABN check. A lot of bookkeepers and a lot of accountants out there are now recommending that whenever you've got a new supplier, do the check and then document that, yes, I, in the notes section of account right, check this ABN on ABR on such and such a date. But hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, great. I'm conscious that people have to rush off to other appointments, so on behalf of Richard and HIA, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us and taking the time to view our presentation. Have a great day, and if you have any questions, email them through. I have recorded this webinar, so I can send you a link to watch it another time. And I'm also putting together just a basic information sheet. So thanks again, and thank you, Richard.
No worries. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.